Okay, welcome once again to the program here, the weekly program, soon to be a daily at some point here. Continues all throughout the summer. Pierre McGuire coming up in a couple of moments. You will hear also from Jeff Jackson, the CEO and president of the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Operations Department, commenting on the Connor McDavid contract extension. In the meantime, want to remind you, as always, this show is presented and brought to you by Simply Spiked. Summer is here, hanging out in the great weather with great friends. You want that feeling to last forever. You can still squeeze every drop out of summer with Simply Spiked. Simply Spiked has 3 delicious flavors. The OG Summer Classic, Simply Spiked Lemonade. That's always a party favorite. Try a sweet and juicy summer sip with Simply Spiked Peach, or check out the newest flavor in the Simply Spiked lineup that is Simply Spiked Limeade, Sweet and Tarts. And if you don't know which one to try, you can just try them all. The Simply Spiked Variety Pack. These juice beverages are 5% alcohol, contain real fruit juice, and are the perfect, refreshing, and convenient summer drink. Simply Spiked pairs perfectly with any summer occasion, summer hangs, backyard and pool parties, or barbecues as well. Simply Spiked launched in Canada in 2023 and has been bringing the juiciness ever since. Pick up Simply Spiked at your local liquor store or your next summer hangout. Must be legal drinking age. Please celebrate responsibly. And amongst the things that I want to get into today, I'm going to talk to Pierre McGuire about this one, and we'll talk about contracts and extensions and free agents that are still left on the board. Zach, were you as bewildered as a lot of us were when in the new CBA, when the details were revealed that there was going to be no more double retention of salaries? Well, there is, but there's a time period that you have to wait. I think we all looked at least I did, and said, where does this come from? And I've never heard anybody grouse about this before. I've never heard anybody complain about it before, either owner side or player side. It just seemed to, or team side or player side, it seemed to come out of nowhere. Like, this one shocked you too, right? I think we were all on the same page, right?
Yeah, it felt like they were trying to create a solution for a problem that didn't exist. And
Yeah.
I guess maybe in a way getting ahead of it, but it was also kind of like it created foreseeable issues like lack of movement and lack of excitement around the trade deadline. It was like, well, now people aren't going to be able to flip guys as fast, and you're going to have to plan way too far in advance. I didn't get it when I saw that that was a part of the new CBA.
So this has kind of been a white whale of mine for the summer as I've tried to figure this out. Like, where does this come from? And I haven't quite nailed down the specific person that it comes from, the specific either manager or owner or owners, where this idea sort of originated. But obviously it's risen to the level that now it's in the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. But what I'm told is the philosophy behind it goes like this. Where you might believe that there are a lot of large market owners who are only concerned about themselves and their quote-unquote large market issues. I'm told that that's not necessarily true. Now, certainly there are some organizations that are only concerned about things that directly impact them and can't see the forest for the trees and are only interested in what makes their bottom line more sizable, and it doesn't matter what happens to the other 31 teams in the NHL. But there are some teams and some owners that do see the big picture to all of this. And this is the driving force behind it. It is a small market versus large market issue. Or should I say, this is a large market helping small market issue. And the theory behind it goes like this. Small market teams, as we all know, are crucial to the success of the NHL, even large market teams, because the greater market share that small market NHL teams get, and the more fans they bring in, the more money they bring in, the more successful they are, what goes up in turn? The franchise value of larger market teams. Small market teams succeed, large market teams succeed. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. And the feeling behind this, and I would imagine that both Gary Bettman and Bill Daly would be, very much, in tune and on side with this feeling amongst some larger market owners in the NHL, is that if you allow double retention in the way that it currently exists, what you'll have is, or you have a scenario whereby small market teams can use double retention to make it to the salary cap floor. And what you don't want are small market teams in this endless cycle of using salary cap retention. We've seen it before, folks. Salary cap retention just to make it to the floor. This way it de-incentivizes, or rather, it incentivizes smaller market teams to actually compete and not just use levers in the CBA in order to pay the bare minimum. I'm told that's the issue, and that's why it's in there.
Okay.
Again, like everything else that I always talk about on this show, and always have, and probably always will, as long as there is, a CBA and a relationship between ownership and players, the way we see it now. This is once again about franchise values, because the more competitive the smaller market teams are, the larger market teams benefit because their franchise value goes up by surrender the floor.
I'm glad that we have smarter people on the show than myself, like Pierre coming up later, and you to tell me why I'm missing pieces here. Mm-hmm. And that all makes sense. I completely understand that, and this does seem like this to me seems like a short-term solution to that creates bigger long-term issues, i.e. trades, excitement around player movement, and that kind of stuff, where this would then provoke, hopefully, what you've been pushing for in, as the term you've used, and I'm going to steal it from you because it's a good one, taking the training wheels off of the salary cap. Because that has to, Jeff, it has to come on the other side, because I get it in terms of making sure that the lower end is lower spending teams are not just trying to get to the floor. It solves that. But now you have another issue that will come about more prevalently in the future, where it's going to be like, oh, now we can't trade because we can't fit the guy and we can't retain. Now what? Well, there's got to be some other end.
First of all, with the increase in the salary cap, at least the next 3 seasons, and how much is going, I don't know how much double retention we're going to see in trades anyhow. That's fair. when everyone's right up against the salary cap, as has been going back to the COVID era of the NHL. Yeah, sure, you need help from other teams to help facilitate some deals. I'm not so sure that it would even be that much more prevalent, given how much salary cap space all 32 teams are about to walk into. And we started to see the beginning of that this past summer. So maybe that's why maybe you look at it and say, yeah, you know what? It's not really going to be an issue here. So let's make sure that teams are actually spending on players to, again, incentivize teams to spend on players as opposed to dead cap space. I mean, how many teams have you looked at? I mean, the old Phoenix Coyotes were looking your direction. Did you look at and say, like, they have like $30 million in dead cap space here? Like this is ridiculous. How many retired players do they have that still have contracts expiring on their team? I think this is a way where you try to mitigate that.
There was a point where you could probably go onto EA Sports, and if you just like manually unretired everybody on the Phoenix Coyotes, you would have like a Hall of Fame roster. Like
it's true.
Like Shea Weber, Pavel Datsyuk, Marian. These guys are just coming out of nowhere on these, and it's just like, how did that guy end up there? Oh yeah, get to the floor. But Jeff, again, back to the point. To me, it feels a little bit like, because again, that's why I said you're smarter than me. You remind me of these things. Opens it up, salary cap goes up, spend more. Okay, yep, open it up a little bit. But then when everybody spends more, what? You know what I mean? Like it kicks the can down the road a little bit, probably opens it up. And then all of a sudden you and I are going to get on the show 5 years from now. We're going to say, hey, remember that conversation we had about taking the training wheels off?
Yeah.
Maybe it's time.
As much as, and I know he's sort of, one of, I mean, he's the Jacobs family has been around the NHL seemingly forever, certainly all through Commissioner Bettman's tenure. And I don't know that this was his idea they brought up, but just to give you a sort of sense about, you may have a perception about one owner and just think like, okay, Jeremy Jacobs is only interested in his business, his bottom line. But I'm told like him, and there are some other owners like him as well that are very much like big picture. Like no one likes spending revenue sharing money and help, but there's like the idea that, I don't mind this. And apparently Jeremy Jacobs is very much someone that, even though it might hurt his team in the short term, Jacobs is always someone who's taking the long view on everything. Just for some balance for how people feel about, and again, this is just like one example, but Jacobs is very much like that. Anyhow, coming up on the program today, so that's what I've been able to glean so far from what the double retention issue is in the NHL. More on this in an upcoming episode of The Sheet. In the meantime, I don't know if that was any good. I hope people understand. Daily Outline powered by FanDuel. This show is, of course, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more with North America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. And coming up in a couple of moments, you're going to hear from Jeff Jackson, the president and CEO of hockey operations for the Edmonton Oilers, commenting on the Connor McDavid contract. But also, Pierre McGuire is going to stop by, our longtime buddy here on the program. Pierre has worked at and played at every single level in the game, so it's always good when you want to do like a wide show with a lot of different topics, and we'll bring up that double retention issue with Pierre in a couple of moments. But amongst things that he will talk about, the Tyson Barrie retirement, congratulations to honestly one of the great guys in this era of the game. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. Loved watching him play. Just sublime skater. The Fedorov jersey retirement has a couple of sidebars to it as well. We'll get into that with Pierre in a couple of moments. Some of the contracts have been interesting. The Nazar contract is fascinating. Marco Rossi contract is interesting. Nazar and Rossi are going to be a couple of contracts that we're going to talk about with Pierre McGuire here in a couple of moments. But in the meantime, I want to get right into, so I want to play this clip for you, this Jeff Jackson interview. So last week, as you know, we were in Muskoka. We did the podcast from there, but we were there putting together a multi-part interview series that we're going to roll out at some point soon, I believe early September. And one of the people that we talked to was Jeff Jackson. Now, Jeff Jackson, listen, he's been a player, OHL, the Alexanders, and NHL, Maple Leafs, and Nordiques, etc. He's been an agent, he's been a manager, and now he's the CEO and president of hockey operations for the Edmonton Oilers. And one of the things we discussed was the situation with the Connor McDavid contract. And essentially, I just wanted to know, where are we at and why are things so quiet around it? So we'll share part of the interview here. This is Jeff Jackson commenting on the Connor McDavid contract situation on The Sheet.
If we had been sitting here exactly a year ago, I'm going to ask you about Connor. If we had been sitting here a year ago and Connor McDavid hadn't signed an extension, I would have said the hockey world would be going crazy right now. It would be on fire. But the opposite has happened. Everyone's really calm about Connor McDavid and the extension. How did that happen?
I'm not sure, other than the fact that there's like a certain level of comfort with Connor. He's been in Edmonton for 10 years. He's been very vocal about how much he loves the city. He loves playing for this team. The team is a good team, which is paramount to Connor, having an opportunity to win.
Mm-hmm.
I think the conversation would be a lot different if we were struggling and we hadn't been and gone as far. I mean, this is pointing as it has been to not win. We've been right there for 2 years in a row, and I think although we've made changes this summer, I think we have a really good team again, and obviously so Connor feels good about all that. So it could be the relationship with Connor and the city. My relationship with Connor goes way back. Connor has a lot of confidence in Stan and has been public about that. And, ownership and Daryl Cates and his family have treated Connor and Lauren very well. And so I think it's a combination of all those things. And I know last year when Leon had another year left and we were going to extend him or wanted to, it seemed like there was a lot more pressure, media talk about.
It seems like Leon was noisier than Connor's been, which I never would have guessed.
A little bit, but I tried to tamp that down last June when we were in the finals. I know there was like, if you don't get him signed right away, you're gonna have to trade him. I was like, well, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Like he has another year. He loves playing in Edmonton, and sure enough, we got a deal done early September with Leon, and I'm super happy about that. So I sort of feel it's the same with Connor. It's not going to be a long negotiation, and it's sort of when
How quick is that phone call, by the way, or how long is that? How quick is that conversation?
I think that it won't be. It'll be unlike any other sort of negotiation because it's not really, and I think that when Connor's ready, like we'll have the discussion and we'll get a deal done.
All right, so if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan, you're probably feeling pretty good about what Jeff Jackson had to say about the Connor McDavid contract extension situation. And again, like that series on the road, we'll start rolling that out. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zach. Sometime in early September.
Sounds right to me.
Okay, very good. With that, let's get to, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about here with Pierre McGuire. Let's bring on our marquee guest of the day, someone who I would imagine has been enjoying his summer, but is still making time to talk to a little punk like me, and he is the one and only Pierre McGuire, and he joins me on the program now. Pierre, salut, mon chum, ça va?
Oh, ça va très bien, Jeff. Great to talk to you, and I love what Jeff Jackson had to say.
Okay.
Because this takes you inside the negotiation of a star player that's happy in his environment. So think about his friendships: Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, Darnell Nurse, Jeff Jackson, Chris Knobloch. So the sense of familiarity for Connor McDavid is there. He loves being in Edmonton. Ownership has treated him fantastically well. How many times do you hear general managers or presidents of hockey operations talk about the relationship between an owner and a player? Not very often. So they set this up a long time ago, and something that people haven't talked about is how proactive Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman were this past spring after they lost in the Stanley Cup final. They didn't just hang their hats in Edmonton. They came east, they met with Connor McDavid and Connor McDavid's agent, and they moved forward from there. And so this is not a hard negotiation. It never would be a hard negotiation. I think it just comes down to how many years does Connor want to commit to Edmonton.
I thought that was one of the most interesting things too about the entire, and we did more in the interview on Connor McDavid, but the idea that this is a really quick conversation. Like this is not really a negotiation. It's like, okay, Connor, what do you want? Like there are a handful of players, and you've coached some of them that have been able to just walk in and say like, look, this is what I want, and ownership says okay, or the manager says, I'm going to run this upstairs. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Like Connor's one of those guys.
Yes, you are correct. And you know what? It's not going to be a hard negotiation. He'll be plying his trade in Edmonton for a long time, and they're going to be a real good team again. No issue about that at all. Mm-hmm. One of the things, though, that I think, and I don't know if this has been said on your show, Jeff, and if it has, I apologize to whomever may have said it. This is reminding me a little bit what's going on in Edmonton to when my good friend Brian Burke was running the Vancouver Canucks. And they had this unbelievable team for a long time, and they couldn't sort out what was going on in goal. And because of that, they could never get past the finish line. And this is not a shot at Stuart Skinner or anybody else, but
yeah,
I think they're kind of in the same position as Vancouver.
Given where the goalie market is right now and who's available, most notably nobody, I really do wonder if this is if and then again, it's not going to solve their problems. But I've mentioned this before, and I want to add another name to it because we saw this situation play out. Interesting, you just mentioned Vancouver. We just saw this situation play out in net with the Vancouver Canucks with Artur Shilovs, who there was no way he was going to clear waivers. And, Lincoln and Demko are the guys there. There are two that I wonder about. And again, they would come in as quote-unquote backup goaltenders. Now, there's also a new goalie coach, we should point out, in Edmonton. I do wonder about Michael DiPietro, because I do not think that Michael DiPietro clears waivers, and I do wonder about Nico Daws. So I wonder about Boston, and I wonder about New Jersey. Waivers are always interesting, and as you very well know, like you've been on so many sides of it, timing is everything for a lot of these situations. But I do wonder if the play here is Edmonton picks off one of those two goaltenders on waivers, and it becomes a different situation with a different backup to Stuart Skinner and someone who could probably push him more.
It's interesting that you would bring up Boston. And I know part of that is because of Michael DiPietro and what he did last year in Providence. He was fantastic. But here's some. Do you remember the days when Boston and Edmonton, Sinden and Sather
Oh,
would
yeah.
pick up massive deals,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
one of the guys that got traded was, Billy Ranford, who
Yeah.
won, was a starting goalie for a Stanley Cup winning team. So who beat his old team to win the
Yep.
Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, I'm not taking pot shots at anybody because I want full disclosure here. I'm real good friends with the Bowman family, and I really respect Jeff Jackson a lot. They were going through it all last year trying to find somebody to be the GM, and eventually Stan got that job.
Yep.
Did they miss out on Olmark, or did they miss out on Swayman? The only reason I bring it up is I was living in Boston then. It was volatile beyond belief with what was going on with the goaltending situation there. And I just wonder if they didn't miss out on the potential of hitting a home run with Boston to solidify their goaltending position.
So, first of all, I like Linus Ullmark, and I cheer for Linus Ullmark. I want that guy to be really successful. And listen, it was a very much a platoon situation with Boston with Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. Swayman ended up playing the bigger, high-pressure games for a long time. I'm not disqualifying the Vezina Trophy that Linus Ullmark won. But, going into it, when Ottawa made the deal for Linus Ullmark, outside of Rochester-Utica matchups where it was Linus Ullmark and Thatcher Demko are putting on a show here, and everybody needs to see this because they're going save for save, and this is incredible, I haven't really seen it from Linus Ullmark, like high pressure, big situations. Like, Oilers are a Stanley Cup team. I know exactly what you're saying, and I really want Ullmark to be that guy. I just haven't seen it yet.
So I'm not sure I was talking about Olmark though.
But Swayman.
Swayman.
Okay. All right.
That's
Now
kinda
you've got my attention.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
You got my attention too, because I probably didn't speak or phrase it very well. But I was thinking more in terms of the volatility that was around Jeremy Swayman. And you talked about Mr. Jacobs and his family before, and they've been amazing stewards of the Boston Bruins. And people can complain about them all they want, but if you look at their history of success with the Boston Bruins, it's unbelievable. And you said something that was really intelligent with Zach before, and I was just eavesdropping. You talked about the importance of franchise values.
Yep.
Mr. Jacobs is at the forefront of all that stuff.
Oh,
I had the honor of being in Board of Governors meetings, and trust me when I tell you, he and Mr. Leopold in Minnesota and the late Rocky Wirtz, there were certain people that kind of drove this whole thing, and those were three of the more prominent ones. But nobody usurps the power of Mr. Jacobs in the league outside of Commissioner Bettman. Nobody.
And again, I've never sat in those meetings. I'm just drawing this from various conversations. But he's an owner, as much as he does have his detractors. I understand it. Like I get it. He's someone that takes the long view. We always talk about good of the game, good of the league, all those types of things. I've been told there are a lot of owners that will fall on the side of what will benefit their team, period. And Jacobs, as much as he wants to be, and understandably so, be protective of his Boston Bruins, still has a long view. Like, there are a lot of owners that don't like writing revenue sharing checks. And I think Jacobs is one of those guys who looks at it and says, listen, I'm writing revenue checks because the more that the small market teams improve and get more market share, that increases my franchise value. I'm writing this check as an investment for me and other large market teams. That's what I've been told about Jacobs.
Just to back you up on that, and I know we're kind of going in a tangent around Swayman, look at what happened with Arizona moving to Utah. And look at ownership that's taken over in Utah. And look at how that franchise, which was down and out, you can say whatever you want, and the league knows I care about every team as much as everybody else, but that franchise was in peril. It was in major peril. And all of a sudden now it's resurgent. It's going to be good. They've got amazing stewardship at the ownership position. It's tremendous. But I'm going to get back to it. I know that the Jacobs don't like long, protracted contract negotiations. And all I remember is when Jeremy Swayman said, I'm not in this for me. I'm in this for all the other goalies. on my podcast that I do with Jimmy Murphy called the Eye Test. I got to tell you, I went right on and I said, you know what? He's in trouble because there's no way that the Jacobs.
I had listen. I had never thought that you were thinking about Swayman too. But yeah, if that was the play, and if indeed he was, like, listen, we've seen when things go south. Joe Thornton, maybe the best example when things go south, the Boston Bruins don't hesitate to pull the trigger on big deals. Let me ask about a couple of interesting contracts that we've seen. First of all, congratulations to Kevin Magnuson. Agent formerly with KO Sports, now has gone on his own after Kurt went to Wasserman. And the Chicago deal, holy smokes! Like the player a lot. I think he's going to be a really good 2C if Connor Bedard remains 1C, and that I think is still a conversation too. Maybe Nazar becomes a 1C here. 53 games, 7 years, $46.13 million over 7 years, to which Pierre McGuire says what?
And I believe it's front loaded at almost $10 million the first 2 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that's going to be an interesting thing when they have to do the dance with some of their other players in terms of getting guys out of entry level. Yeah, it's an interesting contract for sure. I hope it works out. I don't want to be mean on this because I think the player's a really good player too. I don't know him as a person at all. I respect what Chicago's doing. I think they've done some really good things in terms of bringing in younger, more athletic, dynamic players. I don't think any of them are as good as Taves or Keith or Kane. Mm-hmm. And I have no disrespect to Connor Bedard, but I don't think he's Patrick Kane yet. I don't know if he ever will be. But it's interesting what they're doing. My only thing is, I'm going to go way back on you here, and I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. Rick DiPietro was a first overall pick.
Yes, he was.
He was a really good player.
Yes.
At Boston University. He was.
Yes.
He really was. And when the Islanders signed him to that massive deal.
15 years.
I was doing a presentation in the NHL offices at the time for mass marketing people. And I was shocked, Jeff, about the contract. And I said, because I'm going to tell you the truth, whether I like it or not, I'm going to tell you the truth. And I said, I don't like this deal a lot. I think it's a great deal for the player. I think it's a bad deal for the league, and I think it's a bad deal for the team. I got called into the office. And like you, I have tremendous respect for the people that work at the NHL. I've been in the league a long time, and I've watched what they've done to grow the brand. It's just been amazing. But I read the Riot Act. How do you know? You can't say that. You don't know. And I said, well, I think I do know. And sure enough, that was a bad deal. And we're going to see whether the Nazar deal is a good deal or a bad deal. But I have questions about it for sure.
There's a few people, right? Because nothing happens in a vacuum. When a contract gets signed, there are some teams that are happy about it, some teams that are upset. There are some agents that are thrilled about it, and there are some that are not. If you represent Cooley, Fantilli, Carlson, Gauthier, Bolduc, probably feeling pretty good, right? If you're Cole, attention Winnipeg, Cole Perfetti's on the last year of his bridge. Like if you're Cole Perfetti's representation, you're feeling pretty good about. Like I think this would have been Gary Bettman's first managers meeting, and he was sitting beside Brian Burke and Serge Savard, who was running the Habs, and Bob Gainey, who was running the Stars. Serge had signed someone, I can't remember who the player was. Maybe it was Stéphane Richer. Signed him to a contract which was going to affect how the Stars did business with a couple of their other players, right? And it got to the point where they're starting to push tables away and pull back chairs, and the guys are rolling up their sleeves, and the commissioner turns to Brian Burke and says, "What's happening?" And Burke says, "Well, Gary, you're going to see a fight." But that's how emotional it can get when one signing affects another team directly, or in this case, a number of teams. Like if you have a star player coming off an entry-level deal right now, and you're the agent, hallelujah. You know, this is kind of like, and you remember these years when Bob Goodenow ran the NHL Players Association, and Ian Pulver was his right-hand man. Ian now just signed Marco Rossi to a nice deal with Minnesota. I mean, they had free agency all planned out. Like, this guy's going first for this number, this guy's going second, and it was like every summer it was like a symphony, the way that free agency worked, and the Players Association had it all laid out. Now you have this contract, and everybody else is saying, all right, now it's my turn to go up to the trough. You have a thought on that idea, the cascading effect, Pierre?
Well, because they're allowed to share information. The Players Association and the agents are allowed to share information. Ownership's not allowed to share that kind of information, even though it's pretty easy to access right now. I would like to be Lane Hudson's agent.
Amen. Wouldn't you?
I would really like to be Lane
Oh,
Hudson's
yeah.
agent. Again, you know, we talked about to start the show, Connor McDavid's negotiation. It's not going to be a hard one.
Yep.
I don't think Lane Hudson's going to be a hard one either. I don't. I think it's going to be an easy one. But, you know, I grew up in Montreal, love the Montreal Canadiens. I think that Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes have done a fantastic job. They're going to have to get Lane Hudson signed. Why wait? I mean, just get it done now. Take the pain. And you got Dobson internally to kind of set a benchmark for where you can go, and you just go where you think you need to go to get 8 years with Lane. Or 7 years. Well, I think he gets 8 right now.
You can get 8 now, but that's gonna go the way of the dodo bird. Yeah. You know, it is interesting. I'm curious because you've worked in management before, and you've sat down with deals like this and other deals. Like, there is and we saw this most recently, I suppose, in Buffalo, where the idea is identify your core of young players, identify who they are, and then lock them up for as long as you can. Essentially, I mean, it's a gamble. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all necessarily template for all of it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the philosophy of identify your core, lock up your kids for as long as you can. You have a thought on that one? Is that always sage advice to managers?
As long as you don't overrate your prospects internally. A lot of teams now, and I think social media is driving this.
They all do, Pierre. That's the problem.
It's unbelievable. I'm really comfortable telling you this, Jeff.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking a fight with anybody here, but I'm comfortable telling you this. There are a lot of teams setting themselves up for a major fall this year because of what they're doing with their social media groups. And it's because they're overrating a lot of their prospects and their young players.
Right.
And you got to be really careful. You know, you just can't hand out bouquets before guys have been in the trench. And I think some teams are doing that, so that's a bit of a problem. But if you have a staff that's really forthright and you trust your staff and you're not overrating guys, I would definitely do what you just proposed. I definitely would try to lock guys up for as long as I could.
Marco Rossi. It was a little bit awkward getting there, perhaps, and played a little bit of the waiting game, but 3-year deal, AAV of $5 million, 4, 5, and 6. The compensation in the 3 years, so the QO is going to be $6 million for Marco Rossi. A thought on this one, who seems very much to have physically gotten stronger this offseason. I remember, just to bias the jury here, I remember watching him with the Ottawa 67s, as I'm sure you did as well. And I don't know, and Ottawa had a really good team, a lot of hardworking kids on that team. I don't know anyone worked harder than Marco Rossi. And always has. Every team, he's that guy. Every team has that one guy who everybody works hard. Then there's Marco Rossi. Everyone on Pittsburgh works hard, and then there's Sidney Crosby. He's always struck me as that guy.
Yeah, and you're right. You nailed that. And I think that's one of the things that endeared him to Billy Guerin and to ownership led by Mr. Leopold. It's a good contract. It's a good contract for the player. It's a good contract for the team. It's not locking the player up long term, and maybe they decide long term that maybe he doesn't fit, and maybe they decide he does fit. But the truth is that Minnesota is a team that's heading in the right direction. I think Billy Guerin and his staff have done some really good work there. They've started to get some young players in. The hiring of Greg Cronin to coach their American Hockey League team, I think, is really important. They've got to start getting more young players through the system. I think that will help. Rossi's probably the trailblazer for that. So a lot of good stuff going on there. I think the contract's good. And here's the thing, Jeff. I think you know this too. I was on the show with you probably before the end of the year, and everybody's talking about there's going to be all these offer sheets because of Broberg and Holloway last summer. And I was like, I don't think so. There's going to be all this stuff going on. I'm like, I don't know about that. And we haven't seen any of that. Arbitration cases, there hasn't been one that's gone to arbitration. So I think you and Zach talked about something before, and it's all related to what we're talking about now. The cap. And I'm convinced, having talked to enough people, even though everybody's excited about the cap going up, I don't know how many owners are going to allow their management people to actually spend all the way to the cap.
So you don't buy the argument that the cap's a magnet?
I don't. I think times have changed. I think owners are really watching this. I really do, based on some of the discussions I've had with different people. You know, you got to get to the floor, obviously, and you've talked about that, I think, really eloquently. But I don't know how many guys are going to go right up to that borderline and say, I'm going there. I got to go. I don't know.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but then the problem becomes, and you could say, well, we already sort of have that now with some teams are floors, some are budget, and some are cap. Then don't you just go right back to 2003, 2004, when the Red Wings had like a $92 million payroll and Nashville had 21? And you say to yourself, how do the Preds hang? How do the Preds hang?
But the only difference is back then you didn't have a floor.
You didn't have a floor. Yeah, of course.
The floor is the great equalizer. Now it forces everybody to go there. And I think teams will spend to the floor. Zach made the point about Arizona. They would trade for all these dead contracts to get people to the floor so they could participate in revenue sharing. I don't think ownership now has a problem going to the floor. They want to have real viable players. They don't want expiring contracts. But I think there's going to be people hesitating to go all the way to the top of the cap. I do.
Do you? I want to get your thoughts on the double retention thing that I was talking about earlier. But I also want to ask you about market pressure when your team doesn't go to the cap. I mean, the howls from Buffalo Sabres fans specifically is not spending to the cap. Can't get out of this cycle of mediocrity, and we're not spending to the cap. Like, that is a real thing that affects the bottom line, the people that have, the nerve to buy tickets, for example. When that's why I always say the cap is a magnet, because hockey fans will look at that and say, we have this space, I'm buying these tickets, why aren't you using it with the money I give you for these tickets? It's a real thing.
It's a very real thing, and it's really well said. Here's the one thing it says: if you're winning, nobody's paying attention to that. They got to start winning. They got to get to the playoffs. Nobody's talking about that in Ottawa. They made the playoffs last year, and they got a good team that's going for it, and they're not spending to the cap. Yeah. They did, and it wasn't working. Montreal, people are happy in Montreal. They're all really excited about their team. So nobody's really paying attention to that. Where I think it becomes a problem, if you lose players because you're not prepared to spend to get them, I think that's when it becomes a big problem.
Do you have a thought on? Oh, by the way, I want to ask you about the Buffalo Sabres and just coming off the Marco Rossi conversation. I don't know whether I just talked myself into it because it made sense, but I really wondered if we were going to see Rossi for Peterka. Now he ended up going to Utah, but it just looked like one of those deals that, like I said, you know what, this one just makes too much sense, and the money will probably measure off.
That actually did make a lot of sense, and I had heard that from other people, Jeff. This is the first I've heard it from you. I had heard that, but I see what Buffalo tried to do there. And I think part of what they want to do is they need to get Owen Power straightened out, and they need somebody that can play with a little bit of vigor and vitality. Michael Kesselring's a player that I've been watching since he played at New Hampton Prep School in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I like him.
So he's not going to be the offensive point guy like he was in Utah, because I think his role will change playing for Lindy in Buffalo. But he's gonna bring some sandpaper to that back end, and that's something I think in Buffalo they could use. The biggest thing to me, and I spent so much time in Western New York. Buffalo has to get their identity back. Buffalo needs an identity.
Yeah. Well,
you need to figure out what kind of team are you going to be. And I think Lindy can do that, but they got to get some guys with some jam. And, I think about Barnaby, and I think about Ray, and I think about Mann, I think about all these tough guys they had for so many years. Buffalo, King Kong Korab was there. Think about all that nasty
King Kong, Jerry Korab. Look at you. I love it.
Nasty pieces of business there for a long time. Jimmy Schoenfeld was a good-looking guy. He was a mean son of a gun.
Oh, yeah.
So they always had an identity in Buffalo. they need to get the identity back. And I think that's kind of what they're working towards.
Don't disagree at all. The other thing that, because I look at that deal, boy, we're bouncing around. I look at that Utah deal and I say, yeah, you know what? Like Utah got the better player in it, right? What was it? Sam Pollock would always say, like, whoever gets the best player, was it Sam Pollock? Whoever gets the best player wins the trade.
Oh, it was Sam. Sam Pollock
was
said
Sam?
that.
Yeah, whoever gets the best player, that team wins the trade. I think he might have said it after the Guy Lafleur deal, or to get the pick to draft Guy Lafleur.
Get the pick from Oakland.
That's from the Seals. Yeah, very nice bit of business with LA before that, but that's for the One Day the History podcast that you and I do together. But I look at Buffalo and I say they gave up the better player, but they seem like they could be a more balanced team if one thing happens, and that is if Jack Quinn pops. If Jack Quinn can replace the offense that you're losing in Peterka, then I like that deal a whole lot more. It seems like that trade is a bet on Jack Quinn.
Part of it's on Jack, and part of it's on one of my favorites that I had the honor of working with. I'm a big fan of kids that really are committed to the game, and I look at Dylan Cousins gets traded, to Ottawa, and everybody's wondering about why is that deal happening. All I can tell you is I worked with Josh Norris for a year. And that guy, if he wouldn't hurt, that guy would be a fantastic player in the league. And so I think there are two guys that need to get this worked out physically. One is Jack Quinn, and the other one's Josh Norris. And if both those guys get this thing figured out, I think Buffalo's a better team because of what you just said. Yeah. I really do. And that's not a knock on Peterka. I think Peterka's a really good player. Everybody knows that. He's going to go do a great job out in Utah. But they need Quinn to get to another level. And what are they going to do? Like, this is my only question for you on this one. Because I got so many different people calling. What do you think of that? What happens with Tage Thompson? Is he a winger or a center?
Great. Well, I mean, they made the trade for him as a winger. They made a Hail Mary pass to put him in the middle, and it worked. But then by the end of last season, Yuri Kalic was your first-line center.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have options. The center is the power position for me. And I still don't know that Yuri Kalic is a number one center in the NHL. Essentially what I'm doing here, Pierre, is I'm talking myself into saying he should be in the middle. That Tage Thompson should be a center.
Be in the middle too. So we're on the same page here. And I think he should be in the middle. But that's something that Lindy's going to have to figure out with his staff, because that's a hard one. That's going to be a really important one too. There was a game that I scouted probably 3 years ago. Tage was ripping it up. It was in Jersey. It did back-to-back games on Saturday and Sunday afternoon in Jersey. I saw Tage Thompson. I'm not kidding you. He put on a show. I remember calling Scotty Bowman up after the game and saying, Scotty, this guy's a superstar in the making. This guy's got size. He can shoot the puck. He can skate. He can make plays. I knew how good he was playing for Mike Cavanaugh at UConn. But I never saw that part of it until I saw him in Jersey that night or that afternoon live. I was like, whoa, this guy's got a chance to be a superstar.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about a player that a lot of our audience might not know about right now, but they will over the course of this year. He plays with the Sarnia Sting. His name is Beckham Edwards, and he announced that he's going to Notre Dame. There's no specific time that he's going, and I'm not interested in a thought on the player specifically, but more the process. So this is the first season of this new relationship, as we've talked plenty about, between college player, CHL players that are allowed to go play Division I. A lot of them have caught their teams by surprise. A lot of teams have been left disappointed. Beckham Edwards worked with Dylan Seiko, who's the general manager of the Sarnia Sting, where he plays. And he's the team, Sarnia, and the family and the player and the manager have all been involved with this conversation and with the development plan for this player. There's no, peace out, I'm going to Nodak. Peace out, I'm going to Penn State. Sorry, and leave a team holding the bag. It feels to me, once everybody gets done feeling sorry for themselves, and there are plenty of governors that do in the CHL, as you very well know, that are still, fighting a battle that's over. We think of, there was Hiro Onoda was a Japanese soldier from World War II who they found in the Philippines, who still thought the war was on. They had to get the Emperor of Japan, I think it was like 1971, to go to the Philippines because he would only, he'd only stop fighting when he heard from the Emperor. So it's like 1971 after the war, 20 years after the war, and he's still fighting. Like, I think of these managers in the CHL, or the governors that are still like, you're fighting, the war's over. Like, it's all done. Now let's figure out how the relationship is going to go. And this is, to my knowledge, you can correct me if there's other examples, this is one of, if not the first example of a player working with his junior team and the college and the family to come up with a plan for when it is right for him to take that step. That's where all this is going, right? Like, that's where all this is heading eventually, isn't it? That's how it feels to me, Pierre.
Yes. There are very few players that can play college hockey at 18 years of age. There are very few that can dominate at 19 years of age. So this is going to get sorted out after this year. One of the things I look at, there's certain coaches in the NCAA that I really pay attention to because I respect them. I either recruited them, coached against them, or coached with them, or coached them. So I would say that most of them have integrity, not all, but most of them do. And I think you'll see this thing sorted out after a year. This was a trial balloon that I don't think anybody was expecting to be as quick as it was. And, when McKenna decided to leave the Western Hockey League, and when Martone decided to leave the Ontario Hockey League, it got everybody's attention in a hurry. And I think probably some of these guys are being – and I'm going to say this right now on your show, Jeff. I think a lot of players are going to be shocked at how good college hockey is. And I think people are going to realize, you know what, it's better to wait and be like the Detroit Red Wings used to be with their players. Don't bring them up underripe. Make sure they're overdeveloped. And I think some colleges are going to figure this out, and I think some agents are going to figure this out. Sometimes it's better for kids to stay in junior till they're 19 than to turn to college, because a lot of the numbers are not going to be as high as everybody thinks in terms of what people are going to achieve.
All right, going to bounce around a couple of topics really quick here with you as we finish up the show. I started off the program by talking about where the idea of double retention came from and why all of a sudden this is the boogeyman in the CBA and their locks down. Now, what I've been, I'm not sure how much you caught from the beginning of the show, what I've been led to believe is this is a way to discourage teams from using double retention just to get to the salary cap floor. This is what this is all about is, and there are even some like larger markets that look at it and say like, look, our franchise value goes up if these smaller market teams are successful. So we need to dissuade them from essentially using, holding on to portions of contracts just to make the floor. We need to dissuade everything away from that. That made sense to me. That was the first that I had heard of it, and it's only in the past couple of days that I've had conversations with people around it. Does that resonate with you, Pierre, that this is essentially a mechanism to make sure that, to Zach's point earlier about the old Coyotes with, Weber and that's hosts all these players on it, is it a way to dissuade teams from just using empty calorie cap space?
Yeah, 100%. And I do think what you just said is spot on. The biggest thing to me is, and again, I've been at it a little while, I remember when a franchise was worth $50 million, an NHL franchise. Think about it now. Think about what a franchise value is now. We're talking about $2 billion. Yeah. That's within 35 to 40 years. That's an amazing exponential amount of growth. And just so people understand the business of the National Hockey League, when Commissioner Bettman took over, revenues for the entire league were $500 million. Now they're over $6 billion. That's how big the league has gotten. So the business of hockey is really convoluted, but I think at some point, that kind of stuff that you're talking about, double retention in particular, that has to go away. I believe that has to go away for the integrity of the league. And I do think it will go away. I still think there's going to be a couple things that happen with double retention now. Might be sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Get under the wire quick. Got one more year before the new CBA.
That's what's going to happen. But I think after that, it's all going to kind of go away.
I want to ask you about another. Well, you know what? Before we get there, I want to ask you about a topic that was pretty big last week, and that is the number 91 going to the rafters in Detroit, Sergei Fedorov. I mean, I've been asked for, give me a comparable. I can't come up with a comparable for what Sergei Fedorov did. He was, the fastest skater, had the hardest shot, could play any position, winning Selke trophies, winning Hart trophies, leading the league in scoring. Like, you name it, he could do it, and he could do it better than anybody else and consistently. And Scotty used to use him on point. Like, it's like, I don't know what else I can say about Sergei Fedorov other than he was just one of the most sublime players I ever saw play. As overdue as this may be, and we understand the acrimony with the Carolina offer sheet and the way that he went, and when he went to Anaheim, and the contract dispute that he had with Detroit. Detroit's was bigger, etc. But long overdue. But finally, Sergei Fedorov's jersey goes where it belongs.
So many people to credit. First of all, Sergei was a phenomenal player. Secondly, think about the late Nick Polano, who did all the heavy lifting to try to get Fedorov away from Russia. At the time, it was USSR. And he was able to do it. And he could never go back to the USSR after that because they told him if he did, he might not come out alive. So the late Nick Polano deserves a lot of credit. Jimmy Devellano, Kenny Holland, Scotty Bowman, you talked about. I'll never forget the night Scotty called me and he says, Pierre, I got to play Fedorov more because Stevie plays so much. And it wasn't a knock on Yzerman. Bowman loved Yzerman. But he needed to find a way to get more minutes for Fedorov. So he says, I could actually play him at forward on one shift, and I can slide him back to defense on another shift. And he told me, and you can't compare the two players, but he said, I would do that with the late Jimmy Roberts. I had Jimmy sometimes play forward in St. Louis or Montreal,
St. Louis.
I could back in defense.
Yeah.
So, look, they're two totally different players, but he had
I love Jimmy Roberts. Like, and didn't Scotty have him in Peterborough too?
He
like,
did. That's
didn't
what
the relationship go back that far?
Fort Hope, Ontario, and he had him in Peterborough. So the answer 100% is yes.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, Scotty had done that before, and he wanted to do that with Fedorov. I can just tell you, having coached against him but never coached him, he was a matchup nightmare because of his size, his strength, his speed. He could score from distance. He could score from in tight. But more than anything else, he could score with creativity.
Yeah.
So even if you were one of the best defensive players of all time, you still had a matchup against all those other multidimensional weapons that he presented every single night.
What a player! Just a tremendous player. I don't, and it's not lost on anybody, and everybody noticed right away that the night of the jersey retirement, the Detroit Red Wings were playing the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, the Kamanos Illich issues are certainly all well told, but that one is that was a nice little touch from Chris Illich and the Detroit Red Wings. Let me conclude on this one. Tyson Barrie calls it a career. Smooth skater, great puck distributor, played for a number of teams, obviously enjoyed some of his biggest success, obviously, with the Colorado Avalanche. Do you have a thought on Tyson Barrie calling it a career?
A lot of thoughts about Tyson. He was always a gentleman, especially when I was working on the TV side of things. What I remember the most about him, the time I spent with him at World Junior when he represented Canada, he was such a gentleman all the time and a really good player. And probably the most enjoyable time I had with him was when he was playing not on good Colorado teams, but really questionable marginal teams in Colorado after they had the gold rush out there. And what a gentleman. He was above reproach all the time. He would always have a great answer for a question. He was always a gentleman to his teammate. He was phenomenal with the fans. This is a guy that carried himself above in a positive and proper way. And I always had a ton of respect for Tyson, always.
Absolutely. I echo what you said about working on the media side, on the TV side of things, rather. He was always a delight to deal with. Like, I'm always impressed at the guys that come out after a big loss. To me, the gold, by the way, the gold standard, that was always Matt Stajan. I never saw more like him come out like to do interviews after like horrible Maple Leaf losses. Matt Stajan answered every question, stayed out there as long enough for some of the other vets to get out the back door so they didn't have to face the cameras. You know what I'm talking about. Stajan was great. And Tyson Barrie was that guy too. Tyson was
always like that. I'm so glad you agreed with me on that because Tyson was always like that. I got one more for you. Madonna. I got a Mike Madonna one for you. It's a good story.
Okay, shoot.
So Gordon Miller and I are in Dallas to do a game, and Mike had a tough night. Mike had a tough night. Like, it happens. There are 82 games in a year. He had a tough night. So I kind of punched him in the pants a little bit on the broadcast. Saying he's nowhere near what Mike Madonna usually is, and this and that. And I'm figuring, oh man, just button up because somebody's going to call him up and he's going to get mad at you. So I said, I'm just going to jump the queue. As soon as the game was over, I hustled. Remember, you know how big the building is in Dallas.
Yeah, huge.
I hustled down and get down in the dressing room, and I waited until they opened the door. And I saw the PR people, and I said, I need to talk to Mike for a second. They're like, sure, no problem. And I said, Mike, just want to let you know, tough night in my view. I said it on the air, and I feel real bad about it, but I wanted to get to you first before you heard it from anybody else. But I definitely gave you a rough ride tonight. You know, he looked right at me, and he said, I deserved it. I played terribly. I was like, oh, man, this is – and I shook his hand. I said, I just want you to know, like, no hard feelings. No, not at all. He says, I deserved it.
I think most guys understand the score. I think guys know when they're having off nights.
Yeah,
guys know when it's really not there. But then, like, there are a lot of guys that don't want to admit it, and there are a lot of guys that want to have a laugh at it. Like, oh, yeah, like – I don't know, I didn't sharpen my skates or something. I'm a right shot, but I was playing with a left stick. Like, those are the guys you live to understand, like, no one's bringing it 82 times.
No. But that just shows you, like, I believe certain guys had high standards. Mike was one of those players. Mike, his standard was just so high all the time. Really.
One of my favorite players. And was one of those where I got...
You know I said this to Scotty the other day too, Jeff. I don't know if you agree with me because you brought his name up before.
Okay.
Adam Fantilli. I said this, Scotty says, who does Fantilli remind you of? And I said, I'll tell you right now, Mike Modano. Yeah. And he started watching me. He says, you know what? I kind of see what you're talking about now. So I think Fantilli could be like Mike. I really do.
Yes. He needs to do, it's funny, I mentioned this to Don Waddell here on the show last year. He said, yeah, like we're very much aware of it, and we're starting to see him do this now. One of the great things that Modano always did, and Fantilli is starting to do now, is, you know, Fantilli joins the Columbus Blue Jackets coming from playing at Michigan, and you're young, right? So, but you would see this, and Modano, like, put it this way, Modano, when he skated, blow by everybody, right? But you ask all the greats, and Connor does this. You mentioned Sergei Fedorov, he would do this. The greats play with their speed, right? Fantilli was just one speed to every single puck, to every single situation. And Columbus, Dean Evison this year, what they've been able to do to Fantilli is, and Modano realized this so many years ago, Minnesota. If you just play everything one speed, you're a very predictable hockey player. The great thing about Modano, I always felt, and we're seeing this with Fantilli now, is, yeah, he would kill you on the outside. He was so fast. We had the jersey flap, all of it. But he would play with his speeds too. And once you get that, and maybe it's just because you're a kid. We've seen kids coming out of college do this, kids out of the CHL doing this, where when you're playing college hockey, junior hockey, speed is your best weapon. And then you get to the NHL and you go like, speed's not my best weapon anymore. Versatility is my best weapon. And I always felt like that was, Modano could do it, but he could also play with his speeds. And that's when you become really dangerous.
Think about what you just said, because it's so wise. Look at his mentors. He had Bob Gainey as a coach. He had Andy Murray as an assistant coach. He had Mike Eaves as an assistant coach. He had Rick Wilson this is in Minnesota when he was breaking in. Yeah. Then up front, he's got Bobby Smith. He's got Neil Broughton. He's got Dave Gagne. All these veteran guys that can corral him and teach him exactly what you're talking about. And they really did. Like, back then, I remember we played them in the 91 final in Pittsburgh, and you look at the roster that they had, and Mike was part of that. Brian Bellows was on that team as well. Yeah. Like, they had all these guys that knew how to change gears, change the pace of the game. And that's where a kid like that would learn that. Yeah. Fantilli doesn't have that luxury right now. They just don't have that in Columbus. So that's when the coach has to be involved with that. And obviously, I think they're going to figure it out with this player because he's special. He really is.
This is always great. The time flies. The time always flies in the summer, but like, dude, you know, we get together on this show, and it's just like the time just flies. Say hello to Jimmy for me, to Murph. Always love the eye test. You continued success, and we will touch base. Man, we covered a lot today. Thanks so much for going sort of out the door and around the block with me today, Pierre. Always appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure and an honor to do it. And tell Zach to keep up the good work. You're lucky. You've got an unbelievable guy there. Zach is a home run hitter.
You read that just as Zach wrote it. You read that exactly as he wrote that to you. Well done, Pierre. Thanks, pal. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, you got it.
Be good. Pierre McGuire. Man, there was a lot there, and a nice little compliment to you by the end, Zacharou.
Yeah, not bad. I took the script. I sent him a text right as the show started, and I said, "Hey, can you just make sure to tell Jeff that read this off to Jeff before you get off the end." Yeah, so I made sure he
here's your cue card. Here's your cue card, Pierre. Just make sure you make sure you read this about me.
Yeah.
Nice. There was a lot in there. Anything jump out at you before we get to the conclusion of today's thrilling broadcast here on Monday, August the 25th?
I mean, it was pretty funny talking about the Lane Hudson you should be happy if you're his agent right now. I started laughing to myself hearing him say that. Like,
Cortex.
They're looking at those contracts. I mean, great for Rossi, great for Nazar, like seeing those things come through. But if you're a Hudson waiting, you're going, we're going to be set up pretty well here. It was just a good point. Like, I always kind of forget to think about who's up next in those situations. I find myself getting very caught up in what just happened here.
Going into the last year of their ELCs, just got really happy. Like Leo Carlson and Cutter Gauthier in Anaheim. We just talked about Adam Fantilli, Logan Cooley in Utah. All of a sudden, thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Magnuson Sports, for that one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle Davidson. Kyle Davidson just got a whole bunch of new Christmas cards. Logan Cooley, he's going to send a Christmas. Adam Fantilli, if he's sending a Christmas card. Kyle Davidson got a whole lot of new Christmas cards.
Yeah, no kidding. It just like sets that it's one of the things that's always talked about in football, and it's very specific to position, where it'll be, quarterback sets the new market, the new standard, the new landscape for the new quarterbacks. And it's always a big thing because they're breaking down that door for the next guy. You don't always talk about that in hockey, but these contracts are one of those ones where it just kind of came up and was like, hey, look what's coming. Look what now has to happen. And I thought that was just a good point by Pierre and bringing up the happy customers at Cortex right now.
Just walk in with that contract and say, okay, so this is where we start. And from here we're going up. That's the way it's going to go for our client. One thing I did want to mention, because it sort of winks at something that I kind of think is obvious here, I would imagine. So Bill Daly on the 32 Thoughts pod talking about starting the season in September. So here's the quote. I think the changes we made, we're moving to a 13-day training camp. They're only playing 4 preseason games, and then we're off on an 84-game regular season. I think that will have the effect of creating a dynamic where we can shorten the overall length of our season. I think this is in service of one thing the NHL is really sensitive about, and that is the draft being too close to free agency. If you can shorten the season, then you can take away all excuses from teams who say, we need to do the decentralized draft because it's too close to free agency. I think you want to remove that excuse. So you can do the draft on June 15th. And then have free agency on July 1st. I think the NHL understands that they're really hurting something here that's always been a real bright spot on their calendar as far as a tentpole event. For me, and again, like I'm mainly a hockey guy, so you can give me better context than I have just from observing it the few times that I have. But I think that the NHL draft is the best draft of them all. Now, listen, I'm emotionally attached to all of it. I know a lot of the kids, and I just love it. But I've always loved the NHL presentation of it, and I am not in the minority on this one. This is not a hipster take here, folks. This is like the majority. We love the draft, love how it's done. Don't change this. And I think that if you start the season in September as opposed to October, and you shorten it so we're not getting that deep into June, you open up the possibility of having a mid-June draft, which removes an excuse away from teams saying, we don't want to all get together. I think the NHL understands that it's really valuable, not just to them, but to the entire hockey industry, to have an event where every single stakeholder, even though we use that term wrongly, every single stakeholder comes together in one place for an extended period of time. And good on the NHL. I'm assuming that that's how the NHL is thinking on this one. And if so, bravo.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I'll also just pause you on the one part of the drafts. I'll give credit to the NBA and the NFL. I think that they have a different atmosphere, but I mean, this is a conversation for a show down the road, not today. The difference, Jeff, one of the main differences is the players that get drafted on those nights, NBA and NFL in particular, they're playing the next year. If you're drafted in the 7th round of the NFL, you're playing the next year, which it makes it a very different atmosphere for the people who show up to the event. But I do agree with the NHL sentiment and how good the draft is. And having them in person just makes it so much better. And also, I think that the group that was put in charge of running everything for the NHL at the draft last year did the best that they could with the situation. I thought the ideas were great.
Yes.
Some of the stuff, it just didn't hit. I mean, I'll just quite honestly say nobody's really at fault at this other than internet and connection and technology is having that big of a delay when you've got like some celebrity on his phone FaceTiming in.
I know.
We just don't need that.
I know. Said two guys that do the show remotely.
Yeah, that's fair.
Said two guys that do the show remotely. Here I am, like talking about a
kidding.
hypocrite. Like I'm barking about how, oh yeah, we could do it. We do a decentralized show here. Like, you know, I'm up here in Stouffville, Uxbridge, and you're in downtown Toronto. Here we are beaking at the NHL for not centralizing their product. Physician, heal thyself,
Also,
you two.
I'll also throw out like let's just run through this quickly together, Jeff. Like when do players normally report to not camp? I don't want to say camp. When do players normally show up to the city in general? Like the city that they're going to be playing in and going to camp. They're usually there a week or so in advance, right? Okay, and then camp starts, and then you push everything off. My whole point is more so just, can camp not start a week or two earlier, which then moves October start time into end of September? The time's there.
The sensitivity around all of it, and again, like in my head, I just program to me a lot of times, and you know, you program to like hardcore hockey fans. But if you want to grow it, as we keep saying, grow the game, grow it. We talked earlier about, you know, smaller markets and growing the game, how it benefits everybody. The NHL flat out just doesn't want to compete against football and baseball any more than they already do. Mm-hmm. Like, do you want to compete against baseball playoffs? How much you want to compete against the NFL? My thought has always been, just put your head down, you know, bite down on your mouth guard, and just like do what's right for your sport. Don't worry about anybody else's calendar. But then you look at the greater context of sports, which I always fail at doing because I'm just a hockey fan. And I understand it. I understand the wisdom to it, but which is why I always come back to play less games. But that ain't happening. That ain't happening.
I'll take your less games and I'll raise you more games.
As a matter of fact, interesting thought, Mr. Marek. Let's make it 84. 82, huh? You don't like that's too many for you? How do you like 84? Because now, Marek, you could do two things: nothing and like it. That's what you're gonna get. One thing, and I mentioned this on the Empty Netters pod that I did last week, but I think just came out this morning. One sidebar to the jersey retirement situation with the Detroit Red Wings. Once again, what this will do, and I think I know the perfect guest to do it too. What this will do, I think, will once again raise the issue of Larry Orey. Now, Larry Orey, whose nickname was Little Dempsey because he looked like, you know, Jack Dempsey, great boxer. Larry Orey was the first captain of the Red Wings. He won scoring titles, Stanley Cup. Was Gordie Howe's favorite player, the guy that Gordie always sort of modeled his game after. Larry Orey wore number 6 with the Detroit Red Wings, and when it was owned by the Norris family, that number was retired. It was unretired briefly when Larry's cousin Cummy Burton played, and they let him wear number 6. And then it just went right back into retirement. When the Ilitch family, this would have been, is it 81 or 82, when they bought the Detroit Red Wings, where all the numbers got retired that were already retired and put up at Joe Louis Arena. Number 6 wasn't one of them. The number is out of circulation. Nobody wears number 6 with the Detroit Red Wings. I'm sure many people in our audience have noticed that. If you haven't, it's true. Nobody wears number 6 because it's out of circulation and it looks and feels like it has been unretired. Because it should be there with Howe, Delvecchio, Sawchuk, Yzerman, Lidstrom, soon to be Fedorov. And it raises the question of, when you buy a team, can you do that to the history? Like when the Norris family owned the Detroit Red Wings, they retired number 6. Now, technically, the number is still out of circulation for the Detroit Red Wings. But can you unretire a number? Essentially what I'm saying is, do you have domain over the history of an organization that you buy and can do things like unretiring numbers? Now, Jim Devellano, former manager of the Detroit Red Wings, always said, we only retire numbers here with the Red Wings for players that are in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And as many have pointed out quickly, Jim, the standard for the Hall of Fame is different than retiring a number. Mm-hmm. But even if that were true, once a number is retired, again, in this case, number 6 with your Detroit Red Wings, do you have domain over being able to do that? Now, this would have happened when John Ziegler wasn't commissioner. They didn't have a commissioner. Then they had president, was the president of the NHL. And I think I have the ideal guest to talk about this. But you know me, Zach. I'm like a pit bull on a pork chop for stuff like this, especially about hockey history. Now, Larry's not with us. He died in 1953, I want to say, 52, 53, somewhere right around there. But I really do feel like for his family, for hockey history, for Detroit Red Wings history as well, the number 6 needs to be properly recognized by the Detroit Red Wings as being a number, even though it wasn't with Ilitch ownership, it was Norris ownership, has already been retired. I have in mind a great guest for this topic. And it does, the big question through all of it is, when you buy a team, certainly you buy the history, can you change the history of that team to suit whatever philosophy you want that team to follow now? I would argue no. I would argue most hockey fans would argue no.
I also say no.
I think the overwhelming lion's share of hockey fans would say, you can't do that. No, that's wrong. Just because you have the standard now, that's fine. You'll still need to recognize the past of your team, especially with someone like Larry Orey. Number 6, your Detroit Red Wings. Fedorov, that's great. Doing the right thing. Do the right thing with Larry Orey. And
I agree with you here.
Proper retirement.
The only thing that just I was going to just fully agree with you, but it got brought up by Portuguese Walrus in the chat, and he just said, I think retirement of numbers for teams is ceremonial. The team chooses to take the number out of circulation. Why couldn't the team choose to put it back in circulation?
You can't.
I guess.
No. It has been retired. Just because it was different ownership. I still... Okay, I've heard all kinds of people have whispered things to me. Oh yeah, something Ori and the Ilitch family. But I don't know. I've never heard why it was taken out of circulation why it was unretired, taken out of circulation, whatever, other than that one statement by Jim Devellano. But even that, to me, that swims in shallow water, because again, I'm really uncomfortable doing that with the history of a hockey team. Yeah, really uncomfortable with that. That is your team. That is a number that has been retired. Honor it, respect it, the way it was.
I think in a way,
with all
too,
due respect,
when
Portuguese
you buy
Walrus, if that is indeed your real name.
I think also when you buy it, you're buying the history,
Yeah.
as he kind of had said, like, you're buying it for what it is. You don't get to change the past. You get to now change what the future is. Like, you can have a hand in the future. The past is, and what you've purchased it for, what it is. Mm-hmm. Like, if you were to buy some company, a restaurant, and they got a crappy menu, you can't change and be like, well, the menu was never that. But you can change what the menu is going to be. I don't know. I agree with you here.
I think
you can't unretire.
I think I have the perfect guest for that. I'm going to talk to this person after the show today and try to get this person on the program to go into greater detail and more history. Many of you know who I'm talking about. And if you don't, boy, are you in for a treat. But nonetheless, we have a couple of things to take care of here. I'm glad we mentioned that Larry Orey. Did you know about Larry Orey before, by the way? Is this new?
No, I didn't.
Because I find like newer fans like, who's Larry Orey? Man, he was tough and a good player too. And you ever wonder why you've never seen a number 6 in Detroit? Anybody? Pretty common number.
Yeah, thought about it, honestly. But yeah, makes sense.
All right. I'm curious to see what you come up with here. Maybe it's a question about Larry Orey and the history of the number 6 with the Detroit Red Wings. I don't know. But the sheet is powered by FanDuel, home of the same game parlay. Make every moment more on FanDuel. FanDuel, proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. Put on your thinking toque, Zach. What do you got today?
This is a new one that was put up by FanDuel, and I'll try to get some stuff come through as they put more and more. I think this is going to be a big year for Olympic conversation for us here on the show.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, surprisingly. The one that was put up today, or a couple days ago, sorry, and it's a new market that they've got, is for who's going to make the Canadian Olympic team. And I chose the players who did not make it. So I picked them out of the list. You can bet on a lot of different guys and pick through. Yeah. But if you notice here, Nick Suzuki, Connor Bedard, Robert Thomas, and Tom Wilson all favored. Macklin Celebrini plus 195 to make it, which would put him on the outside looking in. But I thought it was interesting because I just grabbed the ones who didn't make it previously. Suzuki, Bedard, Thomas, and Wilson, they're all favored to be on the team for the upcoming season. Now, not all of them would likely make it then, clearly, because that would be a lot of people coming out. But I just was wondering if there was anybody to you that you thought, hey, that guy's a shoo-in, because that's kind of what we're looking at here with like a minus 320 with Nick Suzuki to be on the team for next year.
First of all, I think it's going... Well, again, like respect, I don't know what kind of season Connor Bedard is going to have, but that's another one of those players, by the way, that I wondered about next contract. Is he a $10 million guy? Based on what just happened with Chicago, we shall see. I think Celebrini is in for a massive season with the San Jose Sharks, but still not there. Tom Wilson is interesting. Tom Wilson had a great year last year. Last Olympic cycle, I'm told that Tom Wilson was on this team. And there were some that watched the Four Nations. I got texts about saying, "Oh, this is why they needed Tom Wilson. This is where Tom Wilson would have thrived in that Four Nations tournament." So I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Wilson makes it. I think that Robert Thomas is on the team, and I do think that Nick Suzuki is on the team too. Out of those 5 that you just presented, I think Suzuki and Thomas are the 2 guys. I think it's going to be. I think it's be another tough year for the Chicago Blackhawks. Just like I think it'll be another tough year for the San Jose Sharks. But right now there are more questions around Connor Bedard than there are around Macklin Celebrini. That may change. Like I had one person from one team say, "Oh, you keep going on and on your show about San Jose Sharks and they're so much fun to watch. They're just behind Chicago by a year." Yeah, all the warts are just going to be going over about the San Jose Sharks once the novelty is worn off of Celebrini and Smith, etc. All the novelty's going to. They're 1 year behind Chicago. That's all they are. I'm not sure that I buy that, but we shall see. The thing about Bedard is too, like maybe one of the conversations that we have about Bedard this year is he a center or a winger?
Yeah, fair.
I mean, that's for a Chicago guest who's a lot closer to it than we are, but it sounds very much like, that is probably going to be one of those conversations, but we shall see. You can tell he's frustrated. Like Macklin Celebrini last year was just like, this is awesome. I'm in the NHL. I'm going to go do a bunch of things. Let's see what happens if you turn into more of a cynical athlete after your first year and your second go around in it. You could see a lot of the frustration with Connor Bedard. Like, listen, you guys are such a skilled player, such a good player. But you can really already start to see some of the frustration. But again, not just with Bedard, though. That's the entire Chicago Blackhawks team. We'll see where they go. Anything else, or are we wrapping? Went a little bit long today.
That's all I got. All I got for you.
Keeping all your attention. Okay, so the crusade to get Larry Ory's number officially retired properly by the Ilitch family. That conversation will continue. As much as Zach talks about how we'll have a lot of conversations about the Olympics, we will, and we'll have sidebar conversations about Larry Ory, as Zach, I'm sure, is already starting the campaign to get Larry Ory his proper recognition by the Detroit Red Wings. Yep. Now watch what'll happen. Watch. Someone's going to show up this year and we'll be wearing number 6 with the Red Wings, and then just like the whole thing.
It's good for us for socials because it'll just be people blowing up. Like, did you see this guy? Have you seen what's going on? Number 6.
Wings fans are passionate. Like, Wings fans are passionate about everything involving their team, but like the Larry Ory story at various points has sort of flared up a little bit. They've mostly been, thankfully for the Ilitch family and the Red Wings, contained fires. I just wonder if now that, Fedorov from the Jersey retirement is out there, like, again, the Larry Ory story is going to continue to pop up, which is my way of encouraging everybody to know your hockey history. And this is another example. Just go learn about Larry Ory. Don't just listen to me. Go do some internet research and find out more about Larry Ory, who really was a fantastic player for a number of years with Detroit. Okay, that's it. That's it for me. That's it for Zach. That's it for all of us here. And special thanks to Pierre McGuire, as always, for stopping by the program. And I think we have some social video of the Jeff Jackson clip that we played earlier, commenting on the Connor McDavid contract situation. And want to thank everybody who was with us last week in Muskoka, both behind the scenes and front facing. All that will be sort of revealed in early September, where we'll start to roll out that series that I think you're really going to enjoy. Some really dynamic personalities and really interesting people in a very, as you saw, relaxed setting. And when people are relaxed, they tend to give you a lot more. And that's what we found last week in Muskoka. Had a really good time being part of it. In the meantime, on behalf of Zach, Marek signing off. Thanks for joining us again here on The Sheet on our Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. We appreciate the likes. We appreciate the eyeballs. We appreciate the subscriptions in a big way. And we just appreciate having your attention for as long as you give it to us here on all of our properties. So thank you. NHL is around the corner, and we'll get fired up on a more regular basis. But in the meantime, we promise to keep it hot, and we're going to keep doing it. Stay tuned to the socials when this next show will be on the air. Got it? Tip your Zamboni driver on the way out. We'll be back one day, soonish. How's that? If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.